Okay, let's talk a little bit about picking technique, how it started for me, um, what I was trying to accomplish in the beginning, and how I came to the movements I used early on. Um, when I started playing guitar when I was about, I want to say 12, maybe late 11, I think 12, and I stole a guitar from my father and just refused to ever give it back, and still have it. It's this one. This is my first guitar, so that's why I'm using it here, just um, old time's sake. Actually, I haven't had the opportunity to play this guitar very much in the last few years. I just moved into a new house with my girlfriend, and before that we lived in a two-bed apartment. This had to be left at my family home. I just didn't have space for most of my guitars. Anyway, back to picking. When I first started, after a few months of playing, my father decided to send me to lessons, and I was really fortunate. I had a really great guitar teacher. My teacher was a man by the name of Declan Collins. Declan teaches in Galway in Ireland, and he is a fantastic teacher and a real virtuoso, a phenomenal player, one of the most impressive players I have ever been in the same room as. And I'm still saying that, 18 years after the fact. It's if you ever get a chance to see Declan perform, and he plays all over Galway, he's a great guy. If you're thinking about taking lessons from Declan, do it. But in the beginning, anyway, I used these picks. These are the Dunlop 0.6mm nylons, and these are really soft and really flexible. And I would never use these for any purpose anymore, except for soft rhythm playing or something like that. I would almost never use this. But this is what was in the guitar case when I stole the guitar from my father, so that's what I was using. And Declan told me to put my hand on the bridge and to use up and down strokes. And that was, for the first year or two of my playing, that was really all I knew about picking. And at the time, the stuff I was learning didn't really require more than that. Maybe there was a couple of little faster bits, but nothing that was really, really difficult. So I think that it was probably like a poor version of the Ingve system, because my hand was definitely in this position with the edge of my palm here resting on the bridge, and I used to think the volume knob was in a bad place. It doesn't bother me anymore with the kind of technique I use now, but I used to find that really annoying. I thought that was just a problem with guitar design, and that how else would anyone do it? But then anyway, when I was about 14, I got into the kind of virtuoso guitar playing. I heard it in a way that really made a mark on me, and I wanted to put a lot more work into getting better at guitar, and picking is one of those things you have to get better at if you want to get better at guitar. So Declan was a strict alternate picker, almost completely strict alternate picker, and he really stressed the importance of alternate picking. And I think the reason he does that with his students, particularly his beginning students, is because of time. I think in the beginning I had pretty bad time, very bad rhythmic flow, that kind of thing. It probably drifted an awful lot. I put a lot of work into that later, and I think I got a lot better at it, but in the beginning I think it was definitely a big weakness for me. And alternate picking very naturally has a strong rhythmic flow. It tends to pull you to the beat. So I think that's why he does that, and I'm very, very grateful for it. I think it's an excellent foundation. I would much rather teach somebody to begin with a strict alternate picking technique and have them have good time and good rhythm, rather than whatever's optimally fast or whatever is most suitable even for the types of passages that they'll eventually want to be able to play. I think time is the most important thing. But he was talking about alternate picking, and I realized that if every stroke is down followed by up and up followed by down, and that's the sequence forever, that I had to be able to change strings after any of those, after an upstroke, after a downstroke, whatever it was, I had to be able to change strings. And I at 14, I was able to derive the ideas of pick slanting and cross picking just with, pen and paper and a little bit of geometry that I was just learning in school at the time. And I originally thought that a one-way pick slanting idea, a movement, a linear movement, something that operates in a single plane, would essentially be useless, which was obviously a huge mistake that I recognize now. And, I realized that when I was a little bit older, but, at 14, I thought, okay, well, if everything has to be strict alternate picking, this is the way I have to be able to do it. So I thought it has to be a curved stroke. There's no other way that I can get into the string and back out again and always be able to escape other than a curved stroke. So the movement that I use is kind of like a combination cross-picking two-way pick slanting movement. And the movement, I think it's as follows. I can only tell you what I feel. I haven't seen this under high speed or anything like that. The downstroke, starting from an almost neutral pick slant with a lot of edge picking and a very noticeable thumb bump. The downstroke is a little bit of ulnar deviation, a little bit of rotation, that would be pronation, and a little bit of extension. So the downstroke is a combination movement which moves me out from the guitar. The upstroke then is the reverse of that movement, and it moves me out in the other direction, and that was the movement. And I would just, try to do that and just get that movement comfortable. And again, I wasn't at this stage thinking about introducing big slanting movements or anything like that, but they did come. They did come more situationally, and when I realized I wasn't quite hitting string changes and I needed to exaggerate the planar shift, the planar rotation that made those movements possible. But that was the movement. Like that. You'll probably notice that I switch picks. This is a Jazz 3. But this movement is not super sensitive to pick for me. If I switch back to this 0.6 mil Dunlop, the movement still works fine because I don't use minimal pick depth with this movement, and there's a bit of a throw to it. There is a bit of a distance. There is a bit of a range on the strokes. Although I hate how this sounds, and I would, like I said, never use it for anything anymore. But that's the movement. The movement is I rest my sisiform bone on the lower strings or the bridge or something like that, wherever it is, and this double escape movement really took me very far in the beginning. I was able to play some pretty tricky stuff pretty quickly. At one stage I had Too Many Notes by Steve Morse under my fingers. I had Paul Gilbert licks under my fingers. I had all of that. Very comfortable. And the benefit of this technique, I think, really is just sheer versatility. You can skip strings, you can play scales, you can play fast licks with very minimal shift. So for example, if I'm playing a cross-picked arpeggio here, this would be a G minor 7th shape. You can clearly see those movements. And that, as I get to the string, stays very easy and very loose. And I can go a lot faster, but cold hands, I don't want to embarrass myself in my first video here. That movement is very, very comfortable for me. I don't think there was ever any string hopping or anything like that with that movement. It never felt tight, it never felt difficult. Where it kind of turns into a pick slanting movement is when I'm playing like the Paul Gilbert type licks, where I'm switching between strings pretty quickly. Like that. And that there I knew that I didn't really have time with the cross-picking movement to escape the string, and I needed to tighten up the movement and exaggerate the plane rotation, and that was getting me over the strings. In the beginning, I did have a preference for outside picking, so maybe I was swiping, I'm not really sure, but now inside picking is just as easy. It feels exactly the same, to be honest. It really doesn't feel very different at all. That was the first mode of picking, and this, it really worked for me. I was playing difficult stuff, but it has a couple of drawbacks that I've never really been able to solve. The first is that because the only contact point with the hand is on the lower strings, I really have to do a lot of muting with the left hand. The fretting hand has to do a lot of dampening. And because of that, it's not the cleanest picking technique for some passages. The benefit that kind of makes up for a lot of that is that it's easy to get a lot of dynamic range. So play harder, have a little bit less gain, the small mistakes won't be heard, but it's not 100% reliable in terms of extraneous noise. The other, I wouldn't call it a downside, but this is just, it's a feature, is that it has a very hard attack. You can hear it right there. And if I switch to a harder pick, this is an Ultex Jazz 3. It's very, very, very clear. Like that. So really, really, really hard attack. And when I was a little bit older, I really got into Alan Holdsworth and Brett Garcet, and I really wanted to be able to dial down that attack. And my absolute favorite player at that time was Eric Johnson, and he does not have this hard attack. He just doesn't have it at all in his playing, and I really wanted to be able to emulate that, and I could not do it with this technique. I've never been able to dial I've never been able to dial that down. It's a feature of the technique. It's good for certain things, not so good for others. Other major drawback is because of the movement and this kind of element of rotation and flex. I have to keep my fingers, my picking hand fingers. I have to be mindful of their position. I have to keep them away from the strings, which means it's difficult to hybrid pick with them. And like I said, Brett Garcet, Eric Johnson, they hybrid pick. I wanted to be able to do that, so that didn't really work for me. I had to get around that somehow. But all in all, I think it's a great movement. I think it's for something that I don't necessarily use every single day. It's not my default position anymore. It's not my default technique. It's extremely reliable. It's extremely versatile, and I would really recommend this as being a first movement if you're trying to get into picking technique in a serious way. It's plenty fast for most purposes. A huge dynamic range, huge versatility, and a lot of just so much application, strong time feel. Pinch harmonics are easy on both the up and downstroke. It's really great. The only thing is that it is a lot of work. There is a lot of movement here. These are not small movements. Because I need to be able to clear those strings. So those are pretty curved. And when they get smaller, that's when it gets situational. And it's, that's where the errors come in. Anyway, that's mode 1. I hope that communicates the idea of it a little bit better. And I hope that was interesting.